So with that, once again, letting you all know that the topic of discussion is about building the talent pipeline, the steps towards innovation, which is exactly what all of us, especially in every company as such, are looking forward to, and how do we drive that? So let's go ahead and invite our moderator for the session first, followed by the speakers and the panelists for the session. So may I invite the Associate Director for PwC India, Mansi Bansal, onto the stage to moderate the session. All right, let's keep that round of applause coming continuously, right? Let's do that. And joining her on stage, we have the Global Head of Human Resources for Fulcrum Digital, Bensely, Zachariah. Yes, please go ahead and a huge round of applause as we invite them on stage. Joining them is Director HR for Magic Edtech, Shagun, Bhunchal. And coming up next on stage is the founder and CEO of Marching Sheep, Sonica, Aron. And joining them is the HR head for BigFM, Charu, Vijayvargiya. All right, Mansi, over to you.
For you.
Yes, Mansi, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ramya. And I think I must confess that since morning, the sessions that I have been attending here, there have been really honest and candid opinions that we've been hearing. And it's really enlightening to learn that, so much we are doing in this space. And once again, welcome to all my co-panelists. And I think, we all here agree that, we are not debating the fact that we have enough reports to say that, diversity and growth go hand in hand. I would like to quote a great historian, Thomas Berry, to say that the greater the diversity, the greater the perfection. Now, I think what I want to ask, and I'll start with you, Charu, first, is D&I has been, a hot boardroom topic since last 3-4 years. And even in the D&I survey released earlier today, says that 57% of the respondents perceive that they are doing well in their D&I journey. That's a big majority. So where do you think your organization has been in this journey, and how would you evaluate that?
All right, thank you so much, and it's so great to be part of this platform, and it's such a lovely audience and interesting conversation. So I'll straight jump into the topic, and yes, my association with diversity and inclusion started, when it became like a tick box, like once in a year you look at, which activities did you do, which falls under this category. And I think we have come a long way from, that point of view. I think in a lot of spaces, wellness, mental well-being, and all of these HR spaces. And I think I'll start with a quote, which is really stuck to me, is like, diversity is like being invited to the party, and inclusion is like being asked to dance, right? And in these forums, you always have, anchors who decide, who ensure that, people are included. And I think that's where currently BigFM is. Yes, I really do think and believe that we all need to have policy, which is more like positive biasing. But at this stage of BigFM, it's more about culture and ensuring that at every stage, we're all thinking the same thing. It's not like that we are only driving some great discussions on boardroom and my last mile is not able to even relate to it, right? And we have made a lot of progress, So, like even our managers are like asking, because a lot of talent pool per se are being very honest. Like for example, women, if they're pregnant, they are telling in the interviews that, I am expecting. And then, managers are usually stuck, what do we do? Should we hire, not hire? So at least those conversations are not getting stopped there. And then they will come and reach out to me asking, what is the solution? Because there is a business deliverable and there is we don't want to exclude it. I'm from a media and entertainment space, and I think the change starts from my industry. And very important that everybody in the organization has that perspective, right? So right now, what we are really doing is like building perspective at every level so that it's easy for us to drive it as an agenda. And even initiatives that we do, the social initiatives that we take part as an organization, we need to have people who think diverse. So for us, it is like we want to hire people across the roles who come with a mindset that they are open for diversity. So we have gone a long way in our agenda to just keeping it at the policy level, but now we are at the stage where we are building it at a culture level. So that's where our stage is.
Well, that's really interesting to hear, and especially when you brought the point that, you know, somebody was expecting and they were open enough to share, and that's such a welcome change, because I remember I read this book, Lean In, by Sheryl Sandberg, and when she quoted this incident that she got the most lucrative offer, when she was expecting, and she never thought she would get such an opportunity. I thought it was really far-fetched for India at that point.
Yes.
Now, over to you, Sonica. What I wanted to say is that, I mean, while this has been a hot topic, there have been enough disruptions, you know, goalposts changing, you know, many uncertainties coming into the business models, the ways of working, right? So do you think this has impacted the D&I agenda in any way?
Well, that's a very interesting question. So, inclusion is a journey, and every organization will be at a different stage in the journey. So you would have organizations which would be far advanced, which would be talking about way more than inclusion of just women. They would be talking about inclusion of LGBTQ community. They would be talking about people with disabilities. They would be talking about racial inclusion, ethnicity inclusion, and a lot more. They would be looking at not just a recruitment first strategy. They would be looking at culture, inclusion, and so on and so forth. And then there would be organizations who would accept that they are at a very nascent stage. They've not got their answers right. They are still convincing their top management on how to start the conversation. So every organization is at a different stage. And you're right, diversity, equity, and inclusion is seen as an expense. So every time there is COVID, every time there is hint of a recession, what gets cut first? Expenses, cost. Now, my question is that if you want to hire diverse talent, should it not be a part of your recruitment cost? If you want to develop your organization and you want to build capacity, should it not be a part of your L&D budget? If you want to build your infrastructure, should it not be a part of your admin budget? Why do you need a separate D&I budget? Number one. Number two, if you begrudge a diversity and equity officer, I have a very simple example. A long time back, I used to go to this promoter-led organization. In the middle of the month, their budget for toilet paper in the ladies' washroom used to run out. But their budget for samosas and biscuits and pizzas would never run out. But toilet paper in the ladies' washroom budget was over. So I want to know that why do we begrudge that one resource? Would you question the extra resource in the finance department or the marketing department or in the retail department or the sales department? So yes, it has changed, goalposts have changed. Also, we need to understand that today the kind of marketplace that we are catering to, organizations need to be cognizant of the fact that your marketplace does not comprise of middle-aged men. It comprises of all generations, all intersectionality, all the men sitting here. Some of them might be single, some of them might be married, some of them might have one child, some of them might have two children, some of them might be having aged parents that they take care of. Some of them might be a divorcee. All the women that are sitting here, some of them might be single, married, having children, no children, divorcee, single mother, blah, blah, blah. Sexual orientations might be different. We all come with different educational backgrounds. So there is an intersectionality over gender. Today, are we looking at that intersectionality when we are looking at that diversity? So yes, goalpost is changing and our marketplace is changing, our customer and our consumer is changing, and if I don't see that during a COVID or a recession and I take short-termist attitude, then I'm being penny wise, pound foolish. Sometimes it happens unconsciously and without being disrespectful. I might have the best of intentions, but let's look at this event. All right? And the disclaimer is I don't want to be disrespectful. Is this the most accessible infrastructure for someone with disabilities? Question. No intention, no malintent. No intention on my part to be disrespectful, but I'm asking this as a question. So as organizations, today the workforce does not care. In one of the earlier panel discussions, the two ladies from L&T and what was the other organization?
Fulcrum?
Whichever one. So they said that, in manufacturing, it is difficult to give flexibility. Yes, giving flexibility in terms of work from home is difficult. But how do I think innovatively when it comes to DEI and generations? Flexibility is not just in the form of from where to work. Flexibility can also come in the form of career pathing. Flexibility can also come in the form of what kind of learning opportunities and exposure that you give. Diversity comes in different forms, and how do you address that diversity? I don't think as organizations, you spoke a number, 57%. There is a stark difference in what HR leaders believe as our organizations being inclusive and what their employees say about their organizations being inclusive.
Well, I do have a question on this, and we'll come back to this, but thank you so much, Sonica. I want to ask now, since the disruptions have impacted the D&I agenda, and that's very clear, Ben, the companies are now looking at innovating, and it's come to the level of specifically designing inclusive frameworks to make their employees feel included, right? So, but when it comes to measuring, like Sonica said, it becomes a complex exercise. So, it's all good at the leadership level, but how do you really, what are the parameters you would consider when you look at evaluating the progress?
The theorist in me possibly gives me an idea that I got to start with a strategy, talk about setting a target and all of that stuff, but I think you put in a rider right at the beginning that we have to be candid. So I would possibly just chunk those entire sequences which we as HR people have learned, and we deliver that eloquently. So I would stick to something like, let's look at where the rubber hits the road. The first and foremost element of understanding whether it's a success or not is just walk on your floor, be it the manufacturing or a tech industry, talk to somebody at the lowest end of your chain and ask them, what do you believe is your so-called DEI or targets? Or do you believe that your company really has a concept called DEI? Or make it even more simpler, ask a lady, does she feel included, accepted as a lady in the organization? If the answer is yes, I would say at least the company is successful in ensuring that every employee knows that. As HR people, we all do that. We derive EVPs. The only problem with an EVP is the EVP sounds good on your website, on your strategy document. You ask the employee, is this your EVP? 90% of them would not be aware of it. So that's the first time, line of success to understand, do your employees really know? Second, do they really believe, even if you've managed to do a good communication exercise, do they really believe that it's happening? And it's happening in the right sense. That's the second one. The third one is that just a value statement that they create, or do they have some sort of, investment in the whole thing? When I say investment, I'm not asking about their budgets. I'm asking about like, where all does that affect? So if you talk about any, change of behavior, which is what we look at as far as culture is concerned, we talk about like, how do you change behavior? You possibly use a reward mechanism, or possibly you used a value-based behavior system. So these are some of the things that you include if you believe that something is important. Does your TEI have any of these factors built in? If it doesn't, and it's just one line item on the whole website, then I can assume that there isn't anything really happening. Third, how many people do you really practically enforce? Like when I say that I have to hire so many people, how many do I really hire? More importantly, hiring is not so difficult. It is difficult, but it's not so difficult. How many do you retain? At the end of the year, if I've hired 150 women employees, how many are still there? Now, it's a little controversial statement, but let me state it's there out in the media. A lot of people are speculating there is already a case, a legal case against Twitter. In the past 3 years, if you notice, the gender diversity part of it has increased exponentially, with possibly the best of intent to say that everybody is working from home, so you can get people who did not want to come back to office, you can still tap on that potential, and so you did that. Now, that sounded good. That was good as far as numbers was concerned. Many people were ambitious enough to move from a 20 to directly 50, which to my knowledge is a dangerous trend unless and until you're just doing it for the numbers' sake. Now, how did it backfire? Right now in the tech industry, which I represent, 150 to 200,000 people were laid off in the past 2 to 3 months, out of which 48% of them, or 44.5% to 48%, depending on which one you read, estimates that they were women. Now, you may say that's still fair enough. You still have another 54 or 56, which is still the other way around. But when you understand the other part of it, to begin with, they were somewhere in the 20s to 25%, from which you bumped it up and deducted 45% of the lot. So where do you stand today is the question. The answer is nobody wants to discuss that. Nobody is going to say that. And this includes companies which have come in print, like the ones like Meta, the ones like Twitter. There are already cases running on this where they say it's discrimination. So that's another criteria. I could go on and on in realistic criteria, but we're running short of time. I would say that some of these factors are what is realistic. As a company, if I'm today at 20%, if I say that I'm going to do 50 next year, I would say be careful about that company. Because they really don't mean much. Because if somebody transforms at 20 to 50, I'll tell you what could be the techniques. There are techniques like some of the big companies. I don't want to name them. I don't want to be caught in a legal suit. But the point is, they say in the next year, I want an increase of 20% of women managers. So how do I manage it? I say in advance. And why do I say in advance? So that you can set it up. I tell you in advance that for every guy that you want to promote in your team, I would want 2 ladies to be nominated for the promotion. So what do? You're smart enough, you understand the HR ratings, the rankings, how it works. 3 is not good enough out of 5. If you're using a Likert scale, you need a 4 at least. So what do? You pick out 2 women and you give them a 4 rating in anticipation because you already have a guy in mind who you want to promote. So what do? Put him forth and say, these are the 2, so I get my quota. So it works on a quota basis, so which means in the next 3 months, I will end up managing your targets. The management is happy, the managers are happy, everybody gets the rewards. It still doesn't help the cause. I just use gender diversity as an example because that's much more easier and practical in India corporate world, but that's how it works. So these are some of the criteria that I would say would be the right criteria to look at success to say, is it working or is it not working?
That's really interesting to know, Ben, what you put forward. I think, Sonica, you wanted to add.
I just want to add to one of Ben's points. There are a lot of different kinds of companies here. There are a lot of MNCs here as well. So what really happened after the George Floyd murder? A lot of companies felt the need to demonstrate their need to show commitment to diversity. And they said that, okay, we are really committed to racial inclusion. And they started hiring a lot of their chief diversity officers as Black people. And there was a lot of representation of Black community increasing across Europe and the US. And it is pretty much similar to what he is saying, which is also very similar to the increase in gender diversity in India. And now when there is a lot of layoff happening, it is the same people who did not seem to have teeth to do anything. Today, when we work with more than 300 clients across the globe, who are the chief diversity officers we interact with? Black women, Black men, and women generally. By and large.
I think that speaks volumes for itself.
Yes. Now just imagine that these are the people who have to be sponsors for the underrepresented community that needs to be hired, that needs to be nurtured, that needs to be promoted, that needs to be retained. And if they don't have the buy-in and the teeth to get things done, how frustrating and difficult it would be. Back to you.
Yeah, I just would like to add something here. So we, of course, should be looking at DEI from a very, very holistic point of view. So, we've spoken a lot about diversity all through the day. But if you look at it, the way I would like to put it is that diversity is basically a fact. It's a global fact, okay? All of us are born unique. All of us are very diverse in the way we've been brought up, the family that we belong to, what we've got as an education, where did we actually land up in terms of our careers, where did we start, all of that. So diversity is a fact, and so it's something which is there globally. Now what's different here is that if you look at the other two parts of DEI, which is equity and inclusion, they are choices, okay? The choice that I as an employer would want to make. Okay, do I have the intent to make this choice at this stage? Okay, or is it only going to be diversity and I do not have an intent to kind of carry forward the other part, which is equity and inclusion. Now, I represent the tech industry, and so I'll just take you back a little bit as to what has happened in the past 3 years and how is it really having an impact on DEI. So if you look at past 3 years, and this is basically the post-COVID scenario, all the organizations in the tech industry were kind of forced to add diverse, have a diverse workforce. Why? Because, employers were actually looking for digital skills, they were scarce, there was a talent war, there still is a talent war. And they ended up hiring or onboarding talent from the industry, from the market, and hiring people from across locations, hiring people with different education, pedigrees, okay, hiring people with different orientation because we wanted skills. We really wanted to keep the show running, okay. So that's one part of it. So this diversity got a push in the last 3 years if I talk of tech as an industry. It got a huge push. The major challenge that we've been seeing last 2 years or so is about equity and inclusion. So we've been able to get diverse workforce, but then we are now working in a hybrid mode, or probably still working from home. People are not able to see a organization which is in the form of a brick and mortar thing. Okay, the sense of belongingness. How do I generate that sense of belongingness and include them, in the organization? So I think that's one aspect, equity and inclusion, which has been a challenge, which has become a challenge past 2 years or so. Rightfully so, past 6 months, what we have seen is we've seen an economic slowdown, specifically in the tech industry. And so when we are looking at something with a very short-term, goal, or looking at something as a short-term goal, the first thing that organizations ended up doing was to kind of look at the DI budget and slash it. Or if I were to kind of hire a DEI person or a team in my organization, I would go ahead and stop, the hiring. So actually the hiring in DI went down by around 19% past 6-7 months, right? So, defocus it, okay? Because I'm looking at it, because the organizations are looking at it with a very, very narrow thing that, okay, it's just a short-term goal that I need to kind of achieve. Though it's a long-term, goal, it's a journey, and be it an economic slowdown or an, upturn, this is going to be the key differentiator. So, yeah.
Very interesting, and I'm very happy to see the passion in this panel talking about topics and building on to each other's arguments. I think coming back to the topic that we have today, building the talent pipeline, what I wanted to know is that now, coming to you, Shagun, how are you hiring differently, keeping inclusivity in mind?
So I would rather remove the word different from this question, because as an organization, I represent Magic Edtech, and we are a digital learning organization. We provide our product and services in the education space. We are doing what we were doing earlier. So I would not say that it's any differential approach in terms of going and targeting a particular segment of people. Of course, it has to be merit-based. So let's say, so the first thing out here is, yes, we have worked a lot on our employer branding, okay? So how do you want to portray yourself as an employer to the target audience, okay? How do you engage with them at that step, okay? So working on that employer branding, and it can be in the form of how does your website look? Does it have faces from all races or for segments or religions? How does it look? A very small thing, okay? So how are you projecting yourself as an organization? This is one aspect on which we've actually worked past 2-3 years. So that's one part of it. The other is how do I define my job descriptions, okay? And make them look very neutral. They should actually be very neutral, and have a mechanism to hire people on the basis of merit only, right? So instead of saying that, okay, for so-and-so role, I need these skills or these behaviors, can I assess them on organizational core values and not just look at cultural fit, but cultural add-ons, okay? People who can come and add to my culture, add to the culture that I've already built as an organization, right? So these are some of the things that we as an organization have been doing, and we've given more focus to this. And we will keep doing this in the future as well.
Okay. Now, Ben, coming back to you now, we heard in the panel discussions earlier that, there have been different ways of working now. Some people have opted to work from home. Some have, the opportunity to go to office, and they're happy working out of office. Now, it's a very interesting observation that I saw in some recent analyst reports that it is considered that, if you are seen or if you are visible in office, you tend to get meatier roles, you get better training opportunities, better growth opportunities, and, there are analyst reports supporting that. So what do you think should change, or do you think the change has come in the behaviors and mindsets to really adopt the hybrid way of working?
Okay, again, a question which possibly can be looked at it two ways. One, what you mentioned, the last part of it is being seen is what we call as a recency effect, which means like, you got to be there, and the last possibly time that you've interacted before a performance appraisal or something like that, which was there, I would say, at all points of time. As far as working from home and so on, let's take the tech industry as a classic example. We could have done our work from home even in the past. We do it now. Why didn't we do it? Because we didn't want it to be done that way. So what did we say? That client security is the most important thing. Collaboration is the most important thing. So we had a long list, and as an HR person, I championed all these causes, though at times I knew that I wasn't saying the truth, but that was what I was supposed to say, so I said that. Now, the day this happened, the lockdown was announced. The company that I work is not a big one, yet 36 hours is what it took to go completely into an online mode. Nothing got disrupted, 2 years, no client security issues, absolutely nothing, everything has come back there. Now comes the question, so then what's your problem? If everything is working, why not let it work? One of the things is primarily to do with our mindset, is what I would say. Now, if we ask people to come to the office, most of the bigger companies who have done it have said that, there are big companies who, when it happened, said that forever we're going to go hybrid. We're going to go remote. A few months later, they said we're going to hybrid. Then they said, no, everybody back to the office. Everyone is trying their level best to bring people back to the office. But you may not have heard anybody terminating a person because they did not come to the office. And you know why? And that's the reason why I also do not say anything about it, because I know that there is a limitation. People have terminated people for moonlighting. And you would have seen the numbers. Wipro says 300, another company says 400, which sounds legitimate. But nobody speaks about terminating if you don't come back to the company. The simple reason is, I have made an announcement that everybody has to be in the office. 60%, 70% of the people do not come back. If I terminate one, I need to be fair. I need to terminate everybody. Otherwise, you're going to have a discrimination. At the end of it, like Ankit said, it's all about ROI. If my business does not run, me proving a point as an HR person does not matter, because my salary comes in only when the business works. So what do? I take the middle path. Now, the middle path is what we call the hybrid. Everybody now is eloquent about hybrid. There are only two types of people. One who believes that you should work from home. Another who believes that you should work from the office. Two mindsets, simple. What is this hybrid? That hybrid is the model which is devised, which is business safe, is what I would call it. Which means I do not want to dispute. I do not want to stop my business. At the same time, I want you to come back gradually to the office, so I would take the middle path. Is this a good model, bad model? I don't want to get into the details because that would take a lot of time. However, human behavior has not changed. That's my point. Pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, every question, as an average Indian, we all would know what is in it for me. And this is not just Indian. Everybody asks, possibly the English guy asks that in a little more civil manner. We ask it a little more blunt by asking, what is in it for me? So if you ask somebody to come to the office, the first question is, if I come to the office, apart from being visible, for being visible, all the big bosses have to be there every day. Most of the places, that's also not true. They don't want to be there. So, how do I make the visibility? Maybe it's better to put in an automated, a reply or a mail which goes at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning for my boss to understand what a hardworking guy. Right? So that could be an easier way to make your presence felt, because it simply doesn't work. Now, don't they have a point? Yes. If you tell somebody you can stay at home and you should come to the office, the first question is, what would I get? Will I get a 10% more increment? Or will you cut? And in India, it's all the more than possibly the rest of the world. We have something called the relative unhappiness. And you can see that from your households, like when you are young, when the neighbor's power goes off, the first thing that your mom will ask you is the neighbor's power also off? Sorry, when your power goes off, the question is your neighbor's power off? How does it help you? It doesn't help me, but it gives me a relative satisfaction that I am not the only one who's suffering. So let him also suffer for it, and if so, then I'm happy. Rather than thinking about calling the electricity office, which has its own pitfalls, but nevertheless, I don't do that. So something similar is what's happening here too. Unless and until we come to a model where in the West, where they've accepted that some people will work from home, some people will work from the office, and there is a difference between both. So I don't have any problem making my people in the US understand that the guy who works in Boston or in New York will not be getting the same salary the other guy who possibly stays in much more of the interiors would be getting. Why? Because they have mentally accepted the fact that I will get a lower compensation because based on the city. Even in India, we have what you call the CCA, City Compensatory Allowance, which some of the government servants would understand how it's adjusted and how it's done. It's for the same reason. But if I tell this to my people, most of them are from Pune or Mumbai, that is the base location. They're from all over India, but this is from their base location. Somebody sits in Shimla. He makes a 40 to 50% saving on his income by staying with his parents, spending maybe 1/4 the price that he pays, in Pune or Mumbai, and that's how he likes it. So it's not behavior, it's pure maths. Somebody had made that statement in the past about the economy, it's all about money, honey. And that's exactly what it is. It's all about money. So if I get a 40%, I don't want to come back unless and until you tell me that some part of the 40% that he's got is also docked or penalized, or you give me something back. So till the time that happens, trust me, nobody is going to be successful in India, be it hybrid, be it remote, be it, in the office. That's perhaps the maturity curve that we have to go through. We have to reach there. Once we reach there, it will work. And if we don't reach there, we're just going to grapple around with, press releases which says that we have asked everybody to come to the office. We have made it compulsory. When a journalist asks, like, what's the result, you say, next question, move on. Because it's too difficult to explain in a line or two. So that's possibly what I would put it. I would say it's legitimate. We need to have to go up the maturity curve and accept the way it is rather than what you call trying to bring in something as a stopgap arrangement to say that you'll be happy because you'll be inspired or obliged, whatever it is. It doesn't work. That's my take.
I'm hopeful, Ben, that it stays about money and then we are able to enjoy our flexibility that we are enjoying right now. Okay, so Sonica, you mentioned about the Chief Diversity Officer interactions. Now, what I wanted to specifically ask you is that it is a complex role. I mean, whether it is represented, by the underrepresented section, but it is a role where you have to drive change through influence, right?
Yeah.
Now, it sounds easy, but it's like I said, a daunting task. So what are the real-time challenges when you consult or you offer your services to them are they facing in enabling the D&I agenda?
Many a times they don't have the budget, right? So in fact, 2 days back we met a client, Nandita, my team member, and I met a client, and she had a list of things that she wants to do. And she said, Sonica, I don't have the budget. Can you help me get the budget? Now, if that is where they are stuck, how are they going to drive inclusion? Like she said, each one of us is unique, and if you want to drive a culture of inclusion, a chief diversity officer cannot drive inclusion. It is an employee experiences an organization through the manager. The kind of culture a manager creates in the organization, in the team. Is the manager running inclusive team meetings? Is the manager inclusive while doing an interview? Is the manager inclusive while doing a performance appraisal rating? Or is he giving a standard 3 rating to a woman who comes back from the maternity leave? So an organization experiences inclusion through their managers. Now, if the chief diversity manager has to build that culture, then you need to build managerial capacity. Now, if you don't have that budget, then how are you going to do that? Now, and that is why I said, please dovetail it into your organization or managerial capability building budget. Don't call it a separate DEI budget. When a manager nurtures and builds their team, who benefits? The manager benefits, the business benefits. So you need to be very careful here how you are positioning it. And that is one place that the chief diversity officer really struggles. The second place where they struggle is that their success gets intertwined with the success of the underrepresented group that they are working for. Now, let's say they are working for women, and in quick succession in a team, you have 4 women who leave. You would have the whole organization up in arms saying, हमने तो बोला था, वो pregnant होके चली जाएंगी, वो शादी होके चली जाएंगी, आपने बोला था कि women रखो, अब हमारे target का क्या होगा? So chief diversity officer की rating खराब हो जाएगी. Right? Now, it doesn't matter that the manager was a toxic manager. It doesn't matter that the manager did not create an enabling environment. It doesn't matter that the manager did not give the right role to the woman, lekin chief diversity officer's career is at stake. So these two are some of the serious challenges I have seen diversity managers really struggle with. The third is, why do you need external support? आप खुद run करो ना program, design भी करो, फिर उसके बाद उसको implement भी करो, hiring भी आप बैठो, end to end हर चीज़ आप खुद करो in house. आपको किस लिए रखा है? आपका तो role ही है ये.
So a tighter role definition is.
How? You don't need external support if you are only doing diversity. Then why do you need external support? So that's the third one.
And that sounds quite complex, I must say.
Of course, you are dealing with mindsets. You are not just doing numbers. People who for 40, 50 years are only used to seeing women in the kitchen, or the transgender community on the red traffic signal, or PWDs only lachar on the TV screen. आप उनका mindset कैसे change करोगे अकेले?
And I think that brings me on to my next question for you, Charu, that, you know, like she said, I mean, the targets are all driven from the top. You know, the leadership sets the targets, and it's left to the chief diversity officers to, you know, have them embedded in the culture. Now, how do you in such case really ensure that you are able to create that value for your people and your clients and stakeholders at large?
Thank you so much. So, see, I would say that, you know, in the current space of HR transformation, I think HR has gone through a huge transformation because I think they really take the onus of diversity and inclusion and they run after it. But HR itself has been transformative in last 10 years, where we are all business HRs now, you know, and we take pride in saying that we are business HRs, we understand profit, we understand entire maths behind it. And I think that has been a great uplift for the HR function itself across industries. Having said that, in the current scenario, I think we are really bombarded by many talent shifts, trends that are there, great resignation, moonlighting, to quiet quitting, to silent hiring, and you know, it's all there, and these numbers are becoming more and more stark, right? So we are really in a challenge situation because, you know, we have to retain people, we have to hire right, and stuff like that. So, you know, I think, you know, for every organization, inclusivity would mean different, you know, and I think HR professionals, and if there are, and diversity and inclusion, it runs in every HR initiatives that you do. It is not really one person's agenda. It has to be owned by every HR member because they're leading that initiative. At the same time, it has to be reflected in everybody's agenda. That's very, very important. Otherwise, it's difficult to really drive this, okay? Because it is, I really believe that it is a culture, it is really a culture thing, you know. And when we are saying all of this and taking the initiatives around it, we have to be very, very conscious of, you know, what are the perspectives we are building. So for example, you know, like I have thought that, you know, one of the agenda that I want to pick up is, you know, am I creating a brave space? You know, and when I say brave space, I'm not really saying that I'll build conversations. I'm saying that, you know, am I really allowing people to bring their authentic self to work? And that's inclusion for me now. And that is a definition shift, you know, because what happened, you know, earlier I used to think that, you know, we all used to think that, you know, we have brought people in together, we have picked up one agenda and made the conversation happen, and then, you know, we have really done something. But now it's moving to, you know, are you creating brave space where people can talk about their problems easily? For example, you know, we have made the change in our leave policy where we are not only saying that period leaves, okay? Infertility is like a big issue which has come up, and it is not really impacting women but even men equally, because because in the current scenario it's not only women who is becoming mother, but both the, you know, party together are becoming parents, right? And it is equally affecting every gender, right? You see IVF centers all around, so that's a problem which is real and which is coming in the workplace as well. So are you able to really bring those societal conversations into the room, and then you're able to talk, right? So I think the conversations also need more direction now, where you're able to bring these perspectives around the culture, in the culture of your organization. And Peter Drucker famously says that, culture eats the strategy for breakfast. So all great strategy falls flat if your culture is not really reciprocating to that. So
Absolutely,
that's my 2 cents on that.
Very well said. And I think in interest of time, I would just go, across the panel to just ask 2 quick questions. And the questions are, what is your D&I goal for this year? And name a company that you would like to emulate who has made considerable progress. Charu.
Okay, from me. Okay, so like I said, I already, I think, gave this answer. I want to create brave space in the organization now, where I'm able to bring the conversation which is happening in the personal spaces in the organization, because although we talk about work-life balance and stuff, but we don't leave our home behind, right? We bring our home along with us when we are coming in the organization. We take our work along when we are going to our homes, right? So we are not, although we say that, we are 2 different people, but mentally we are one person, because at the same time you're thinking, okay, my son's exam is there, okay, I have a delivery to do. So both happen simultaneously in your mind. So, so that's one of the agenda I want to pick up, where I am able to, mine is a small organization, right? And I may not be in the position to take all the inclusive approaches, because maybe it will not be business friendly, right?
You're a small organization, but media organizations are very effective to this.
Absolutely, because see, for example, sorry I'm taking this time, but like we have done this campaign for a brand called Love is Love, where we said that any kind of love story is acceptable, be it a gay relationship or bisexual relationship. Now, if I have to come up as a creative idea like this, I know that my talent has to be right skill set to even think this, and I have to give them environment to come up like solutions like this.
And deal with it also sensitively.
Yeah, and deal with also sensitively. It's not like a just good to do thing. For example, as an organization, we are wanting to hire a transgender RJ, right? And we have been planning to do this from last 1 year. But I don't want to go and say that, oh, I've hired a transgender RJ, because again, it's a good thing to do, but then am I excluding it? So it's a very tough choice, when you're really talking about this space. So,
and a company you would like to emulate?
I think, from the broader space, when I look at it, and I think a lot of this is shaded in, the way reports come out and what actually happens. But I think Accenture has been doing a great job globally in taking some bold steps. So if I really go out of my industry and say, I think Accenture is one of the good companies who has done good work here.
Great. Sonica, your D&I goal for this year and a company you look up to?
See, we are a D&I consulting firm. So our work has 2 parts. One is where we consult with organizations and do their D&I journey. And the second is where we do a lot of non-commercial work. So in our non-commercial work, we are associated with 2 communities. One is acid attack survivors. So I would like to get 25 acid attack survivors to be on their feet. So we work with Brave Soul Foundation, and we are working with some companies to get them trained, and so that they are completely independent for all their life. So that is one goal. And the second space wherein we work with is the Tweet Foundation, where we would like to get 25 transgender people to be placed. So in touch with Gautam and Abhina Aher, and we connect them to our clients where they can get placed. So this is one side of the business or of our work. The second is where one of my team members who's here, Kunal, is working, where we are doing a project and we are hiring interns with a possibility of making them full-time employees, and we have opened it into the people with disabilities community. So I still have to do those interviews, and once that opens, we will take them on board and do. It's an academic cum industrial project which we will release the report sometime end of this year. So if that comes through, that is something that I'm very interested in knowing. So it is the 3 people that we have shortlisted are neurodiverse. So that is something that we are looking at. As far as the company that I emulate, because I know the inside story, as of now, none.
That's very interesting. Over to you, Ben.
Yeah, I would make it brief with a story which I guess would cover both the answers. I was just speaking to one of my former team members, and this is more of a personal one, so rather than speaking about possibly a bigger company, and I have quite a few of them whom I am familiar with, I would stick to the story, and I was just talking about the diversity part of it from a gender perspective. And she just mentioned she is now heading a small product company with around 600 people globally, with around 450 people in India. So she said, I said, what's your diversity like? So she told me it's a 60-40. I said, impressive. And when I said impressive, it was, thinking that it was 40 was women and 60 was men. So I said, that's pretty good for your size. I mean, it's sort of like a condescending answer because she, worked with me from the time she was young and possibly mentored her, so I taught her all the tricks of the trade. So I could talk and tell her that way, more on a lighter note. Then she said, no, it's the other way around. It's 60 women and 40 men. I was like, okay, how did you manage that? Now, that puts me in a different spot altogether because I've never managed to do that in my career till now. So she said, it's a time and tested one. We hired a lot of freshers in the past who came into the system. That's how we changed the gender ratio. I said, that's not a new trick. That's something that everybody does. So I want to know what happened after the kids grew up. The kids grew up from the 20 to 22, got married, had kids. How many of them are still there? And she said, that's the best part. All of them are still there, or most of them are still there. I said, how did you manage that? Simple, no DI agenda. I asked, whose strategy was this? How did you plan it out? She said, it was just an accident, engineered by necessity. Every lady employee can log out at 4:30 in the evening, go home, spend a couple of hours. It's an American company, remember, so most of the calls happen in the evening. Yet, they're free to log out at 4:30. This is pre-pandemic. They all go home, spend some time looking after the children, spend time with the spouse, have a cup of tea. At 8 o'clock, log in for another hour, hour and a half or 2, and finish their calls. All of them are still there.
Brilliant.
I mean, that's what I would call, without over-engineering, a DEI strategy, not even a strategy, an accident that happened because or necessitated by what you call actual need. And that's perhaps something that my goal would also be for this, my organization, not the 60-40 part of it, but at least to see what can I do with my existing people before thinking of moving, more from outside into the whole thing to say that this is what I want to do.
And I think what's interesting is that being able to make that choice of flexibility. I may not choose it, but the fact that the decision lies with me makes a lot of difference. Right?
It's actually a mindset issue.
It is.
Anybody can do it.
Yeah.
And even today, most of you would be listening to it and saying, no, my management would not agree. Why? Because it's a mindset issue. Because they still have worked their 9 hours. It's not that they have bunged work. The women weren't given any concessions. It's purely 9 hours, 8.5 hours, whatever they did it. Just a break in between so as to adjust their schedules, and that's it. Period.
Actually, often the answers are very simple.
Yeah, true.
And
the
they don't
company would
cost.
like to-
The company's name is Simplify Healthcare.
Okay.
Because it's a positive thing, I don't have a problem saying so. And obviously, I am proud of the fact that the person who is heading that has been one of my, mentees from the past.
Wonderful example. And over to you, Shagun.
Sure, I think I'll be closing the note. So, one part of the question was which organization would you want to emulate, right? So I would certainly wouldn't want to emulate any organization because as it was mentioned earlier, every organization is on a different path altogether. And it can be a startup, it can be a mid-sized organization, a large setup. I think it's a very broad spectrum, so to say, right? So wouldn't want to emulate any organization in that space. However, would want to cover one thing, which is that I think one aspect that we spoke about was driving DI in, within the organization. And all of us in our own capacities are doing that already. However, the company or the organization that I represent, which is Magic Edtech, we are doing it not just within the organization, but across the globe. And how? Right? So we are basically in the digital learning space. We provide digital learning solutions and products across the globe. So by that, what I mean is that as an, as an organization, we are basically making the content and platform accessible, immersive, right? For the learner to drive the maximum learner efficacy. Okay? And so for me, as an organization, the learner can be an 8-year-old child or a man who's 65 years old. Right? So that's what I'm driving as an organization across. I'm bringing in content and services which are very inclusive, which is very inclusive, right? So from that angle, my reach or my impact or my touch point is far more as an organization, because I'm touching the society, okay? And the entire spectrum of the society, okay? Learners across the globe, right? So, so hence, I think I'm at the right spot right now, and the organization is doing the right kind of work, and we're very passionate about it, and we are sure the journey is going to continue. But yes, there's one organization which I would like to name, like she mentioned, Accenture, and there is a reason why they are, probably looking good in terms of DAI. They started very early.
Yeah.
So they started almost 20 years back, right? When no one was even talking about it. So they were into this game, so to say, like they came into it 20 years back. So they've been working, and that's why I mentioned earlier, it's a journey. You cannot really say, I want to get results in 2 years time frame, and if you do not, let's chuck this out. No, we cannot. So an organization has been there in this space for 20 years and reaping the benefits now. And I'm sure they're going to be investing further, in this space. So, so that's how I would want to conclude.
And it's very interesting that it is a journey, but there are many, many small milestones that we all have to cover and achieve in that journey right now.